Welcome one, welcome all. Thank you for tuning into Cedar Radio, your guide to films playing at the Art House for the week of April 5th to April 11th. My name is Aaron Spears.
And I'm Dave Huffman. On this week's episode, we'll be discussing The Aftermath and Ash is Purest White.
We'll also be discussing a few cinematic reminders for young cinephiles out there, as well as our Cedar 3 picks for favorite Chinese action films. We're doing the format a little different this week since we're in the middle of the Cleveland International Film Festival, and that keeps the film geeks very busy in Cleveland, including us this particular week. So we're going to jump right in with the new films opening at the Art House. We've got The Aftermath from director James Kent, which is post-World War II. A British colonel and his wife are assigned to live in Hamburg during the post-war Reconstruction, but tensions arise with the German who previously owned that house.
They're still finding bodies. There's chaos out there.
This house is being requisitioned by the British government.
Es ist jetzt Ihr Haus. Aber wir haben uns.
Hey, Lubitz.
Colonel Morgan, please come inside.
This is my wife.
My daughter and I will stay out of your way until we move to the camp.
What if we let them stay on?
You mean live with them? There may not be an outward show of hatred, but it's there below the surface.
During the war, did you ever hope for a German victory? Did the bombing affect the health of you and your family?
It affected the health of my wife. She died in the firestorm.
I'm so sorry.
Dave, as we've mentioned, I think since the very first episode of this show, there's an endless number of stories that still have yet to be told of the World War II experience from multiple points of view, and we've got another one.
It is very true. Yes, there are just a seemingly never-ending parade of them coming at us. Every month here at the Cedar we seem to have another film that is based in and around World War II. And this one stars Keira Knightley. We were talking about how she'd been sort of absent from the Art House
back with Colette.
For a while, but then we had Colette, which was an amazing movie with a great performance. And if it wasn't such a competitive year for female actresses this year, she could have even been a contender for Oscar nomination. But this film is getting mostly good reviews, but I haven't seen it yet myself, and I'm looking forward to it. It's got all the kind of classic elements of a period World War II film and a little bit of tension there, obviously, with the storyline.
This film, too, as well, like I was trying to think of other post-war Reconstruction, World War II films, which that's got to be a topic there. I was drawing a blank coming up with that. But what I did notice is we'd been mentioning how we've got several Dev Patel films in the pipeline this year. And I totally missed Alexander Skarsgård last week, the Hummingbird Project, and this week with The Aftermath. I guess maybe I pay more attention to Dev Patel than Alexander Skarsgård, but every time I've seen him perform something, he's really good in it. So,
and he's back to being handsome in this film.
Oh yeah, he's back to his normal look, as you mentioned last week. You're not a fan of the balding computer nerd Alexander Skarsgård?
I love whenever an actor transforms himself for a role. I really do, but I just think it's interesting. If I was good looking as those people, I would just only ever want to be good looking. That's
right?
all.
Yeah.
I sort of feel like it's their duty to be attractive.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, you got those
it's
genetics for a reason.
Paychecks for.
We want to see you look very handsome and beautiful up on the big screen. All of you attractive people. And then the other film that we're opening up this week is Ash is Purest White, directed by Zhangke. And that is a love story action film set between 2001 and 2017. This man and woman whose life is kind of interrupted as touches of violence kind of interfere with their romance.
Now, we talked about this when we were kind of coming up with our ideas for the Cedar 3 this week. We were discussing Chinese action films because the trailer for this played like an action thriller, kind of. But then with foreign films, sometimes you get this like repackaging of maybe what the movie was, which I hate because it's like feels like a bait and switch. Well, I love his film, so I'm looking forward to this ananyway. But
there is a little of that. Having seen the film now since, and previously having only seen the trailer, there is definitely action. There's fight scenes and things like that, but it is not an action movie in the traditional kind of.
That's not like the first genre tag you'd put on it.
It really is a love story, but it's not your traditional love story. It's not quite like Cold War, which was another turbulent love story over a long period of time. But it is very much about this couple as the woman just keeps trying to reconnect with him after they get kind of torn apart.
Okay.
And then keeps coming back into each other's lives and in different stages of their life. So it has a similar kind of vibe in that way thematically to Cold War, but it's a really great movie with really amazing performances, and I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I thought it was a great, beautiful movie. And I know a lot of times, I think we've mentioned in this before, for some reason Asian films don't always do great here in the Cleveland market. I'm not quite sure why that is, but I hope people take a moment and see it. I'm not quite sure why we don't always do great with films set in Korea or China or Japan even, like they just don't always do great. And this is a really beautiful movie, and if you're thinking, I don't want to see it because it's like an action movie, it's not that kind of action movie. It is really more of a love story.
And if you are in the mood for some Chinese action films, we will be right back with our Cedarly 3 picks for this week. The first few special events to let you know about is the Melt Barn Grilled Late Shift series. It is the first of the month, and on the first Saturday of each month, we feature a great selection of cult films playing here at the theater. As always, on Saturday, April 6th at 11:59 p.m., is the Rocky Horror Picture Show, featuring a live performance by Simply His Servants. The other cult film we are showing this month is Space Jam. The Michael Jordan Bugs Bunny classic plays Saturday, April 6th at 9:30 p.m. and again at midnight. Also shows again on Sunday, April 7th at 7 p.m. Fathom Events and G-Kids are also bringing back to the big screen for its 15th anniversary Howl's Moving Castle. That'll be playing on Monday, April 8th at 7 p.m. The Bolshoi Ballet is presenting The Golden Age on Sunday, April 7th at 11 a.m., and the encore show of that will be on Wednesday, April 10th at 7 p.m. There's also a Fathom Events and Screen Media Films special presentation of the long-gestating Terry Gilliam film, The Man Who Killed Don Quixote, finally on the big screen for the first time. This is showing on Wednesday, April 10th at 7 p.m. So each week we like to take inspiration from one of our new films and suggest a few other films to broaden your cinematic horizons. This week with Ashes the Purest White, we went with Chinese action films. Because as we just mentioned, it looked like it was going to be more of a Chinese action film than it is. No shade against the film itself, though. But we did pick, if you're in the mood for some more just pure Chinese action films, we do have some recommendations here. Dave, why don't you start us off?
Well, it wouldn't be a Chinese action film list without having at least one John Woo film on it.
I have one as well.
So,
see if it's the same one or not.
I picked Hard Boiled.
I did not.
For mine, and that's from 1992, starring Chow Yun-fat, and it's just hilarious, kind of entertaining, over the top. Even for John Woo movies, it's extremely over the top.
That's saying something.
I mean, it has this epic kind of 15 or 20 minute finale in a hospital scene where he is literally like holding a baby in one hand and a gun in the other. It's kind of iconic. It's a great movie. If you've never seen Hard Boiled, I highly recommend it.
The John Woo one I went with was not the first one of his I saw. I think it was The Killer or Hard Boiled. They were almost back to back when I first saw those. But Bullet in the Head from 1990.
Yep. Excellent.
It's set in 1967 Hong Kong, which I only mentioned the date because there's like we'll say an act of vengeance that these three friends do, and then they flee to Saigon in the late 60s to hide out, and then it gets into some... I like this one because it gets into a bit more interesting political territory than the typical John Woo movie does. But it still has plenty of wild John Woo action and
a title that lets you know what you're going to get.
In the head, yeah. It's I think he's one of those directors too that if you're a younger cinephile right now, maybe you're only familiar with like the American stuff that he did, or maybe not at all. I mean, he hasn't been too active with like Redcliffe was a few years back, but he just did Mindhunter, I think. Or Manhunter.
There's a
for Netflix.
Yeah,
so
there's Netflix,
which was
a feature on there.
But if you want to go back, and see some of his early Chinese Hong Kong action films. That's where you're going to find some good.
Yeah, he's amazing. It was kind of sad when he came over to the States, and his first movie that he made here was that Jean-Claude Van Damme movie, Hard Target. Which was just sort of like meh.
Broken Arrow, Mission Impossible. Yeah. Stick with the original ones.
Stick with those. They're great. The next one on my list is a radically different kind of action film, and that's Stephen Chow's Kung Fu Hustle from 2004. it is a film that I could watch, and I've probably seen it at least a dozen times now. I just think it's one of the most entertaining movies I've ever seen.
Yeah.
It is basically a live-action cartoon.
I was going to say, yeah.
And it is...
it's very
just,
cartoonish.
It is... His movies are just so joyous
Yeah.
and just insane, like Shaolin Soccer, and I love most of his stuff. Some of his more recent... Like, he did that K9 or whatever. He did like a little like robot dog kind of thing. It was not very good. It was a huge hit over there.
One.
Yeah,
Okay.
don't worry about it.
Robot dog one. Okay.
I think it was in my mind it was like a little like robot dog, but it was that one not so much. But Kung Fu Hustle, amazing, beautiful to look at, just amazing colors,
Yes.
just gorgeous movie. And the timing in that movie could not be more precise because the action has to be exactly right, the comedy has to be exactly right, and when you put them together, just the logistics of that to make that movie work. Anybody else in like lesser hands, it would have just been a disaster, and instead it's a masterpiece.
It really had like a silent film Buster Keaton kind of vibe to me when I first saw it, where it's just like, it's the comedic timing, but also, just the way that everything's choreographed. It really kind of highlights there. And I believe also a lot of just practical effects of most of the stuff we're talking about here. This isn't a lot of like CGI action territory at all.
The things that he can do with his body is amazing too. He's like Jackie Chan in that way. And I'm just sorry, I had to look up to make sure that I'm not completely wrong.
It
wasn't
your
a robot dog. It was like CJ7. It was like a little kids kind of movie.
Oh yeah, I did see that
one. It wasn't a robot. It was like a little like alien kind of like doggy kind of creature. Right. And in my mind, I just turned it into a robot.
I tried watching that with the kids. I kind of just zoned out.
It wasn't very good. But some of his other ones after that have been extremely entertaining. Like I love Journey to the West as well.
My next pick is, I'm going to stick with the same time frame. There was a time when the video stores still existed and you could watch on VHS in the mid-90s where, from friends and I, we were watching just a lot of these Chinese action films. The first time I remember seeing Jet Li was in Once Upon a Time in China.
Oh, yeah.
Sue Hark's film. Based on a real-life martial arts master, I guess. In this case, he was fighting off foreign forces. I believe that was Americans in this case. And it ended up being so successful, though. Again, it's part of that, like, there's weird naming structures that exist in the film world. Once Upon a Time in, like, Hollywood. Tarantino's new one's coming out. Once Upon a Time in the West. Once Upon a Time in Mexico. This is Once Upon a Time in China. It's actually a 5-film series that Jet Li is around for most of them. I don't think he's around for the last 2, maybe. But again, it's the era of Jet Li, like in his physical prime, doing actual stunts. Not a bunch of CG work. But it's also kind of that period drama of the martial arts master back in the day, and just amazing choreography, amazing action. Very different from the John Woo Bullet in the Head style, where it's modern gangsters, guns, weaponry. This is again, like you were saying,
more traditional.
With Kung Fu Hustle, it's more martial arts.
Well, the last one on my list is also another kind of classic martial arts film. It's called Holy Flame of the Martial World from 1983. It's one of the Shaw Brothers productions.
Oh, okay.
It's by Chun Koo Liu, and it is just probably my favorite of those movies from that period. Just hilarious, weird. It's got, I like in martial arts films where they're all the different schools of martial arts, or a move has a specific name.
Oh, that's right.
Like, this one has like a deadly laugh. Like the move is that you sit there and you just like the guy literally just giggles and laughs, and it like creates this wind.
Oh,
and
I have seen this movie.
Yeah, I love it.
I was drawing a blank on the title. When you said
well,
it.
it's a weird title.
It is.
The Holy Flame of the Martial World.
Oh, that cackle is just ear piercing.
It's just fantastic. So I really enjoy that one. I've seen it a few times. I got to see it in a 35mm print at the Fantasia Film Festival a few years ago. Every year they do kind of a screening of a classic kind of like Hong Kong Chinese action film, and I usually try to go to those. And that one was just what an amazing little discovery.
Right.
I loved it.
Well, again, as a quick public service announcement for younger cinephiles, if you're unfamiliar with the Shaw Brothers, definitely check out Shaw Brothers.
Definitely.
And that's what Quentin Tarantino cited as a huge source of inspiration for his Kill Bill. Oh, I almost said trilogy. His Kill Bill films.
And what's the last one?
My last one, I went with modern because I had a brief 8-month obsession with this film. Wolf Warrior 2 from 2017, very, very recent, by Wu Jing, who wrote, produced, directed, and starred in it. He made this movie for I want to say it was like $20, maybe $30 million. Not a huge budget. It's a wildly nuts action film. Also, it co-stars Frank Grillo, current obsession of mine. This movie went on to make $90 million, almost entirely in China. Actually, I haven't looked this up. It may have hit $1 billion at this point. I don't know. It was the number 7th highest grossing film worldwide in 2017, but mostly in America, everyone's like, what
no one ever heard of it. Yep,
it's a sequel. It doesn't matter if you've seen the first one. I watched these out of order. I saw 2 first, and then I saw 1. It's very pro-Chinese military, but the action sequences are very much inspired by, Fast and the Furious, modern Hollywood blockbuster action films. And,
it's
crazy
been on my
choreography.
list. I keep forgetting to watch it.
I'll bring in the Blu-ray.
Please
There you
do. Thank you. I'll borrow it.
On next week's episode, we will be discussing the new film Woman at War, about a woman in her 40s who declares war on the local aluminum industry to prevent it from disfiguring her country. Taking inspiration from that, our next week's Cedarly 3 theme will be activist films. If you'd like to submit your picks for that particular genre of film, we can be reached at Cedarly Theater using the hashtag Cedarly3, the number 3. We'd also like to remind you we have been nominated for Best Local Podcast from Scene Magazine. There is a link in the show notes if you'd like to head over there and give us your vote. We would really appreciate that. As always, thank you for tuning in to Cedarly Radio and lending us your ears this week. All the music heard on the show is original music written by Grant Heineman and performed by the New Heights Jazz Ensemble, used with their permission, of course. Visit clevelandcinemas.com for correct showtimes and to purchase advance tickets. Also, there are links in the show notes. You can use those if you'd like as well. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We are at Cedarly Theater, spelled with an R-E at the end because we're fancy like that. Don't forget to subscribe to the show wherever you find your podcast, and while you're subscribing, leave us a rating and review, or better yet, tell a fellow film geek about the show. We'll see you at the movies.